Tonight, breaking news, a coroner has determined that Gabby Petito was strangled to death. Her autopsy also revealing she died 3 to 4 weeks before her body was found. The weeks-long manhunt now intensifying for Brian Laundrie after her autopsy proves he traveled back to Florida while Gabby was dead. Also, the wildfire emergency out west. A fire on California's central coast exploding in size, shutting down a highway and forcing thousands of evacuations. Firefighters now battling high winds that are fueling the flames. The shocking video after a plane crashed into a San Diego neighborhood. Neighbors pulling a couple from a burning home. The rescuers telling us they ran towards the home as they heard explosions. Plus, the chilling footage showing the plane falling out of the sky and what air traffic controllers told the pilot just moments before impact. Kyrie Irving sidelined. The Brooklyn Nets saying the NBA star will not practice or play with the team until he is vaccinated. But in the meantime, many states are pushing back against vaccine mandates. Texas now banning any business from implementing them. Crane collapse, a driver's dash cam rolling as a crane toppled onto a hospital parking garage. The investigation tonight. And stealing cryptocurrency exploding in popularity. Tonight, the couple that lost $700,000 in a Coinbase account. So do hackers have free range to take your earnings with almost no consequences? Top story starts right now. Good evening, I'm Tom Llamas. Tonight we start with breaking news and the wildfire emergency in California. The Alisal fire in Santa Barbara County scorching at least 7,000 acres. 0% of that blaze contained. Part of a major freeway is now closed. Evacuations in effect for thousands. Authorities say this fire is more dangerous and destructive than ones they've seen before. Erin McLaughlin leads us off tonight from the fire zone.
It's a battle to save California's pristine coastline from devastation. Just north of Santa Barbara, the Alisal fire burns out of control, shutting down a section of the famed Pacific Coast Highway. Its breathtaking views now marred by smoke.
Not only is this area prone to significant fires that have had significant damage in the past, but it's also a beautiful area.
The fire doubling in size overnight, forcing evacuations from the forest to the sea. Firefighters now defending the famed Reagan Ranch, once known as the West Coast White House. You can see those flames climbing up that hillside just feet away from this highway. Fire officials say those dry fuels combined with the northerly winds are the reason why this highway will be closed for the foreseeable future. 7,000 acres scorched, 0% contained, threatening up to 120 structures. The toll adding to the state's staggering fire season. Almost 2 million acres burned so far. And do you tie this to climate change?
You know, some people would. We are seeing our fires burn differently. We're seeing them burn hotter and faster. They're more dangerous.
Rancher Patrick Brown's family has owned this land for more than 80 years. He evacuated last night. Are you scared?
Yeah.
Tonight, fear, apprehension, and an all-out effort to save one of the most beautiful stretches on Earth.
Erin McLaughlin and her team in the fire zone tonight. We also have breaking news in the death of Gabby Petito, a coroner determining she died by strangulation 3 to 4 weeks before her body was found. The 22-year-old's death ruled a homicide nearly a month ago, days after her remains were discovered in a Wyoming national forest. The autopsy results now placing her time of death in mid to late August. Petito's family reported her missing on September 11th after she vanished while on a cross-country road trip with her fiancé, Brian Laundrie. And tonight, the manhunt continues for Laundrie, the only person of interest in this case. Authorities saying they have investigated numerous reported sightings of him along the East Coast, but they have all come up short. Today's autopsy results now leading to more questions about his travels in early September. Our Dasha Burns has been following this case since the beginning.
Tonight, the mystery surrounding Gabby Petito's cause of death finally answered.
We hereby find the cause and manner of death to be the cause, death by strangulation, and manner is homicide.
The Teton County coroner also finding her body had been in the Wyoming wilderness for 3 to 4 weeks before it was discovered on September 19th, but not specifying a date of death.
I doubt, there will not be an exact date of death on the death certificate.
That timeline aligning with when Gabby's family stopped hearing from her. The last time Gabby's mother spoke to her was on August 25th via FaceTime. She received the last text from her daughter's phone on August 27th. The manhunt for her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, the sole person of interest in the case, now enters its 4th week. A suspect in the case has not yet been named. The pair was pulled over by Moab police in Utah on August 12th amid a domestic dispute.
You slapped him first?
Days later, Laundrie flew home to Florida, then rejoined Petito in Utah on August 23rd, just days before her last contact with her family. He returned to Florida without Petito on September 1st. The Laundrie family attorney telling NBC in part, Gabby Petito's death at such a young age is considered a tragedy, and emphasizing that Brian is only considered a person of interest in relation to her demise. Laundrie's parents claiming Brian disappeared after telling his family he was going hiking in Florida's Carlton Reserve. Brian's father, Chris Laundrie, assisting law enforcement in searching for him on site last week. The Petito's family have continued to call out his parents for their perceived lack of action.
Anyone that lived in that house is a coward, and they don't know how to stand up for their actions.
Laundrie's family have maintained they do not know where he is. Because of the extensive autopsy process, Petito's family was not able to lay her to rest when the body was found, detailing that struggle on Dr. Phil last week.
The hardest thing was, once they found her, not being able to take her home right away. And I understand their reasons, but we needed to mourn. We all needed to mourn. We needed to celebrate her life and remember her. But I wanted to bring her home at like that moment.
The coroner's office now confirming Gabby's body has been returned to her family.
The remains have been returned to the mortuary here, and the mortuary is dealing with the family at this time.
Now, with the major question around the cause of Gabby Petito's death finally answered, the spotlight on the investigation into who killed her now intensifying. We reached out to the FBI about what impact these autopsy results might have, and they declined to comment. But important to note, while the search for Brian Laundrie continues, that while he's a person of interest in the case, authorities have not yet named a suspect. There is a warrant out for Laundrie's arrest related to alleged financial fraud. Tom?
All right, well, there's so many new developments in this case. I want you to stand by because we're going to talk more about this case now. From what we learned about the autopsy and what's next in the Gabby Petito case, board-certified forensic pathologist Priya Banerjee and former FBI Special Agent Dr. Brianna Fox join Top Story right now. Dr. Banerjee, I want to start with you. The coroner couldn't share details about the autopsy, just the manner and cause of death. Do we know why this took so long?
Yeah, I think, you have to understand that this is a very complex case. And that's particularly because of the condition that her body was in. They estimated that she was seen approximately 3 weeks, or she died, 3 weeks prior to being found. So many elements affected the body in that area: the weather, animal activity, just general decomposition. All of those play a critical part in changing how the body looks and, making it more difficult to make diagnoses.
Dr. Fox, knowing the cause of death was strangulation, what does that tell you as an investigator?
Well, it tells us a few things. Clearly, strangers typically do not strangle other strangers. So that was a huge takeaway from the autopsy today. Another big thing is that usually is indicative of anger. That's a very intimate way to kill somebody. You obviously have to know them pretty well to be able to do something like that. And it's usually associated with extreme anger and aggression.
Dasha, I want to talk to you about the timeline. I know you went over this in your report, but we actually did learn a lot more knowing that the cause of death happened between 3 and 4 weeks before she was found.
Yeah, Tom, from the beginning, as I've been reporting on this, we've been looking very closely at the timeline because it has given us a lot of clues here. And now, as we learn from the coroner that her body was found on September 19th and that her body was in that Wyoming wilderness for 3 to 4 weeks, if you backdate that, that lands us toward the end of October, which is when we know know her family lost contact with her. And not to get too granular here, but I do want to run through the events quickly for our viewers because this is so important. You remember that Moab police video, the body cam video that was from an incident on August 12th, a domestic dispute incident. Just a few days after that, August 17th, Brian flies to Florida, his lawyer says, to pick up some items and to close a storage unit. He then rejoins Gabby Petito on August 23rd, and we know the last time that her mother had a conversation with her daughter was on August 25th. She received a text message from her phone on August 27th, but her mother, Nicole, has always been suspicious as to whether or not that actually came from Gabby herself. And so we're really looking at August 25th when her mother last spoke to her until September 1st when Brian returned to Florida. That seemed to be the key days in the timeline here, according to our reporting, Tom.
You know, Dr. Banerjee, when we talk about this sort of timeline, the coroner also said they were able to collect DNA samples for law enforcement. Given that Gabby was outside, exposed to the elements, as you mentioned earlier in your first answer, for several weeks, what kind of clues can investigators still pull from this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important to do a thorough job at autopsy and, you know, you grab whatever you can. And so I think they did exactly what they were supposed to in getting as many DNA samples, as much trace evidence was left. Now, the integrity of that DNA, you know, needs to be assessed by an expert when they're testing it. However, it's completely appropriate to try to see if the DNA can link the suspect to her body.
You know, Dr. Fox, so far as investigators are concerned, nothing has changed when it comes to Brian Laundrie. He's still a person of interest. He's wanted on some financial crimes. If Brian Laundrie did commit this crime, what does this tell us about him, that the death was strangulation?
Well, it tells a few things. First, this was no accident. While you're strangling somebody, there's many instances when you can choose not to, and obviously that was not the choice that was made. The second thing is, obviously now there was a guilty conscience and indicative of knowledge that he had killed her. It wasn't an accident or he left her there. He knew he killed her and he left. So that's a very different fact pattern than we were dealing with just a few days ago.
Dr. Fox, Dr. Banerjee, and our Dasha Burns, we thank you tonight. All right, we turn now to the latest in that deadly plane crash in Southern California. It happened in a neighborhood. A new video obtained by NBC News shows neighbors running to the scene and rescuing a couple that was trapped inside their burning home. NBC's Emily Akeda is there and spoke to some of those brave neighbors.
Is anybody in the house? Can they get out?
Utter desperation as quick-thinking neighbors pull Maria Morris from the flames. Her hair singed, skin burned.
I reached in, grabbed her arm, and got her out. And there were explosions going on, and the fire was getting hotter.
Next, neighbors rescuing her husband, the couple narrowly escaping death. Moments before this, a twin-engine Cessna nose-diving into a San Diego suburb Monday. Witnesses say the small plane's wing clipped this UPS truck before thrusting into several homes, setting off a fireball and thick plumes of smoke. The NTSB on the ground today, parsing through the apocalyptic scene, including the incinerated box truck. UPS holding a moment of silence in honor of their driver, Steve Kruger, tragically killed in the crash.
We've lost Steve, and it's a big loss. But, you know, his legacy will move on, and, you know, he taught us a lot, and that's what's important.
The second death, the pilot. Authorities confirming tonight Dr. Seguda Das was the only person on board. Chilling recordings reveal air traffic control repeatedly pleading for Das to increase his altitude.
22 Golf, low altitude alert. Climb immediately. Climb the airplane. Maintain 5,000.
Ultimately crashing just miles from his destination of San Diego. The hospital Das worked at in Yuma, Arizona, remembering him tonight as an outstanding cardiologist and dedicated family man. Still tonight, a glimmer of hope in the courageous acts of Good Samaritans.
Just knowing, you know, what happened inside, it's just amazing that they were able to make it out, and just so grateful for everything that they and everybody has done.
The son of the hospitalized couple offering a tearful thank you to the community, an embrace worth 1,000 words.
All right, Emily joins us now live from the crash site. So, Emily, what are the next steps in this investigation?
Well, Tom, you can see the cleanup process playing out behind me right now. In terms of the investigation, the NTSB will consider a variety of factors ranging from weather to maintenance and medical records. We will likely see a preliminary report released in about 2 weeks, but the full investigation won't be completed for 1 to 2 years. And Tom, this is the third deadly plane crash here in Santee in the last 6 years. Tom?
Emily Akeda for us tonight. Emily, thank you. Next tonight, to the deepening divide over vaccine mandates, Texas Governor Greg Abbott now banning all businesses from requiring proof of vaccination. But at the same time, the Brooklyn Nets have benched one of their star players until he gets his shots. NBC News correspondent Miguel Almaguer has the latest.
Even as some hospitals in hard-hit Texas face another surge of COVID cases, the governor here is issuing an executive order prohibiting any entity, including private businesses, from imposing vaccine requirements. Fighting what he calls federal overreach, Governor Greg Abbott says COVID vaccines are safe, effective, and our best defense against the virus, but should remain voluntary and never forced.
We continuously are releasing mandates that are undermining everything that public health stands for.
With many frontline workers outraged by the ban on vaccine mandates, Abbott, who contracted COVID in August, has tried to stop school districts from requiring masks and COVID vaccines, though they have long required vaccinations for diseases like polio and measles. Some of the nation's biggest corporations are based in Texas. American Airlines saying today, "We believe the federal vaccine mandate supersedes any conflicting state laws."
There have just been so many things that have been perplexing, that go against medical advice, that go against what some of the greatest scientific minds in the world have been advising us to do since the very beginning of the pandemic.
As our nation squabbles over mandates, some 67 million who are eligible remain unvaccinated. Today, the Brooklyn Nets say they have no choice but to play without NBA superstar Kyrie Irving, who has not complied with New York City's mandate to play at the Barclays Center.
Well, I think it's very disappointing that a high-profile athlete declines vaccination. We all really should get vaccinated, not only for ourselves, but on behalf of everybody around us.
With many Americans still refusing to get their first dose, this week the FDA will also take on boosters for those vaccinated with Moderna and Johnson & Johnson. Tonight, our nation deeply divided over the choice to vaccinate and the right to implement mandates.
Okay, Miguel Almaguer joins us now. Miguel, for months since we've been talking about vaccines, we've been also talking about the mixing of vaccines, especially when we're talking about boosters. And now the FDA possibly looking at this as well?
Yeah, that's right, Tom. They'll hear research on that on Friday. Of course, other countries are already mixing vaccines. For example, if you've been vaccinated with Pfizer, you can get a Moderna booster. That could soon happen here. And we should also note tonight that the White House told governors today they should have a plan in place to start vaccinating children 5 to 11 as early as November. Tom?
Okay, Miguel, thank you for that. Next to the abortion showdown, the Biden administration now trying to block a near total abortion ban in Texas, with the Justice Department now urging a federal appeals court to suspend the controversial law once again. NBC's Katie Beck has that story.
In Texas tonight, a new firestorm of legal chaos over the state's controversial abortion law.
There's just a remarkable uncertainty, confusion with patients about what the requirements are of the law and whether or not abortion is still legal.
Last week, a lower court in Texas suspended the law, declaring it unconstitutional. Then, 48 hours later, an appeals court reinstated it.
The bill that I'm about to sign that ensures that the life of every unborn child who has a heartbeat will be saved from the ravages of abortion.
The most restrictive abortion law in the country took effect September 1st, banning abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected around 6 weeks. But it does not criminalize abortion. Instead, it allows citizens to be enforcers who can file suit against anyone who helped obtain an abortion past the deadline for up to $10,000. Anti-abortion advocates encouraged to see the law once again in effect.
The fact that it has saved about 100 lives a day for over a month, meaning over 3,000 lives saved, is just an incredible victory.
But overnight, the Justice Department asking an appeals court to suspend the law again, calling it state-sanctioned sabotage of the Constitution. Texas Democratic State Representative Donna Howard says the confusing climate is by design to make getting an abortion virtually impossible.
If you're not paying attention right now to what's going on in Texas, you need to be, because what's happening here is absolutely what's going to flow across the rest of our nation.
Katie Beck joins us now from the Texas State Capitol. Katie, all eyes are on Texas right now over this issue, and we heard it there in your story. There still seems to be so much confusion on the ground. What kind of stories are you hearing coming out of Texas right now?
Well, providers say they've opened their clinics and then had to shut them down again, confusing and canceling appointments with patients. We've also been told those patients have been driving across state lines to try and seek treatment. Neighboring states like Oklahoma and Louisiana have been seeing a surge of patients as there's been so much confusion here and no way to receive care. Tom?
Katie Beck for us tonight. Katie, thank you for that. The other major headline tonight, a U.S. panel now saying most adults should not take daily aspirin every day to prevent heart attacks or strokes. Dr. John Torres is here to break down the updated guidance. Dr. Torres, as you know, this is a major headline. I want to ask you, how did they get to this point? Because it had been part of people's lives for so long.
And Tom, this is a huge change, like you mentioned, from prior guidelines, which came out in 2016. And those guidelines specifically said that adults 60 and above should be making individual choices. And those in their 50s, if they're at a higher risk for cardiovascular events, heart attacks and strokes, they should go ahead and take a daily aspirin. But experts have been saying for years that we need to pull back on that a little bit, because we are now understanding that some of the side effects from aspirins, mainly bleeding, outweigh the benefits that you potentially get, especially for specific age groups, Tom.
Yeah, so talk to us about those age groups, just to be clear here.
So right now what they're saying is 40 and 50 years old. Those are the ones that, especially if they're at high risk for cardiovascular events, heart disease, heart attacks, and stroke, they need to talk to their doctor about whether they should be taking a daily aspirin. Not just do it on their own, but talk to their doctor about whether they need to do it. The big change, though, 60 and above. They're saying 60 years old and above, if you have not had a prior heart attack or stroke, and you're taking it to try and prevent that first one, you should not be taking daily aspirin, because the risk of bleeding outweighs any benefit you might get from the aspirin at this point, and so they're cautioning on that. These are just comments, and these are just recommendations and drafts. They're waiting on comments, but they should be deciding fairly soon, and the guidelines are probably going to be along these lines.
Yeah, so speaking about those recommendations, what should someone do if they're currently taking low-dose aspirin to prevent stroke? I mean, you mentioned just basically talk to your doctor.
So that's the main thing. You want to talk to your doctor, because it depends what category you're in. And even in that category, there could be even subcategories of if you've had a stroke before, a heart attack, depending on your risk factor and age. It's going to get kind of complicated. So talk to your doctor about whether you should continue to take it or whether you should start to take it at this point.
Dr. Torres, we thank you for that. Still much more ahead tonight. The attempted abduction caught on camera. A suspect snatching a 3-year-old girl out of her grandmother's hands. How bystanders sprang into action. All right, back now with Top Stories news feed, and we begin with the attempted abduction caught on camera in New York City, and this is some chilling video. The surveillance video shows a man yank a 3-year-old girl from her grandmother in the Bronx. The man is seen running off, but he released the girl after 2 bystanders intervened. The child was not physically harmed. The 27-year-old suspect was arrested and charged. Also in New York, police are searching for the suspect who stabbed the security guard at an Apple store over masks. Surveillance video shows the suspect punch a female employee before he begins attacking the guard. The 37-year-old victim was stabbed in his head, arm, and back and remains at the hospital. Witnesses say the suspect became enraged over the Manhattan store's mask policy. And the investigation tonight after a crane collapse in Orlando, Florida. A dash cam capturing the moment the crane came toppling down onto a hospital parking garage. Officials say at least 1 worker was seriously injured from debris. The crane also taking out some power lines. Engineers now evaluating if the garage is structurally sound. The construction company says the crane was setting a piece of concrete when it toppled. And many of Amazon's corporate employees will be able to work from home indefinitely. In a company memo, CEO Andy Jassy said they are scrapping a plan to bring office workers back in January. Instead, he says middle managers will be allowed to make return to office decisions for their team. Employees will also have the option to be fully remote 4 weeks a year. Next tonight, Southwest Airlines saying it's back up and running after days of mass cancellations left thousands of customers stranded. But experts say the disruptions highlight staffing issues many airlines are facing, and more could be on the way as some flight attendants and pilots push back against vaccine mandates. Here's NBC's Tom Costello.
5 days after the meltdown began,
are there any issues with the flight?
We're okay today.
Southwest was mostly back on schedule today, canceling just 89 flights after cutting nearly 2,500 since Friday, forcing hundreds of thousands of angry passengers to miss their flights.
It was horrible. We had a flight Friday morning at 7 a.m. that was canceled due to crew issues. We were delayed 12 hours getting out of Orlando to get to Chicago.
I was kind of scared this morning that our flight was going to be canceled.
Southwest CEO Gary Kelly,
obviously, I really feel for our customers.
Again today, blamed the trouble on weather-related airport ground stops in Florida last Friday.
By the end of the day, we had significant numbers of airplanes and flight crews that were totally out of position.
But while other airlines recovered quickly, it took Southwest until today to catch up. Through the summer, many airlines struggled to handle the unexpected surge in passenger traffic.
It seems like Southwest was likely, at the max capacity in their schedule with very little margin for error. And, a lot of their flights do go through Florida.
Both Southwest and its pilots union deny suggestions that pilots caused the slowdown to protest the federal vaccine mandate. Though Southwest pilots have asked a court to temporarily block the mandate. American's Pilots Union says 30% are still not vaccinated, while 84% of Delta's employees and 99% of United's are vaccinated. All of this could suggest trouble ahead for the holiday travel season. Between airline staffing shortages, in some cases not enough planes staffed, add to that the vaccine mandate controversy and more passenger traveling, kids will soon be vaccinated, Europeans allowed to come here. All of that could mean a very challenging holiday travel season ahead. Tom?
Tom Costello for us. Tom, thank you. Turning now to the Maryland couple arrested in a submarine spy plot. A Navy engineer and his wife appearing in federal court today, charged with attempting to sell nuclear propulsion secrets to a foreign government in exchange for cryptocurrency. Court documents revealing the pair used everything from Band-Aid wrappers to peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to try to hand over that sensitive intel. NBC News national security correspondent Ken Delaney joins us now. Ken, walk us through what happened inside that courtroom today.
Jonathan Toby once wore a Navy uniform, Tom, but today he walked into court in an orange jumpsuit with the word inmate emblazed on the back. His hands were shackled to a chain around his hips, which meant that he could not fully raise his right hand as the judge swore him in. This was what is known as an initial appearance, with Jonathan Toby appearing first, followed by his wife Diana, whose legs were also shackled. A judge explained the charges against them and read them their rights. He also said he would appoint public defenders for them, suggesting they don't have much money. The judge scheduled a detention hearing for Friday, but there's no guarantee this couple will be allowed bail. The Justice Department has told the judge they are a flight risk because the charges against them carry a life sentence and because Jonathan Toby talked about stashing passports and money in the event he needed to escape when he thought he was speaking to his foreign handler, Tom.
Ken, the big question remains here, who was that foreign entity they initially were negotiating with? And I know that question still we may not have answers on, but we are getting more of a sense of a motive here.
Yeah, that's right. So neither of those questions were answered at this hearing. But we're left with clues from the criminal complaint that we're sifting through. It seems fairly clear that the foreign country was not an adversary like China or Russia, because it seems the country may have informed the FBI that the Tobys had allegedly offered to sell secrets. The FBI also was able to arrange a signal for Jonathan Toby at the country's embassy in Washington, according to the criminal complaint. In terms of motive, it's clear that part of it was money. Jonathan Toby said he had carefully collected valuable nuclear secrets during his years with the Navy, and he hoped to sell them to his foreign handler for a total of $5 million in cryptocurrency. But it also feels like we're not getting the full picture here. These are highly educated people. Diana Toby has a PhD. They certainly could have earned money in other ways. Whether they had any sort of ideological motive, we'll just have to wait to find out. Tom?
Ken Delaney for us tonight. Ken, thank you. Next to Money Talks, what consumers and investors need to know from the business world and beyond. Tonight, we're taking a look at cryptocurrency. Investing has skyrocketed, but now there are some major problems in keeping those investments safe. And CNBC's Eamon Javers reports on one couple's crypto nightmare.
I was kind of like panicked, to tell you the truth.
Eric and Molly Richardson say they saved nearly $1.1 million worth of cryptocurrency in a Coinbase account. But then in July, Eric got an alert on his phone. The message said someone had logged onto their account. Eric clicked on the text, logged in, and soon received an email that their two-factor authentication, which verifies security settings, had been changed.
He was like in a state of shock, so I tried to help him. I tried to stay calm, and I looked up Coinbase online, trying to figure out how to get a hold of their customer service.
Like thousands of other Coinbase customers, the Richardsons say they got nowhere when they tried to get immediate help. That's because the company didn't offer any kind of live phone support. Email was the only option.
And within the 20 minutes that we sent the email, somebody had done 110 different transactions, sending out about 21 Bitcoin.
In all, the hackers stole some $700,000 of the couple's savings. They're not the only ones. As CNBC reported in August, cryptocurrency holders across the country have been victimized by hackers who drain their accounts, and then they can't even get anyone on the phone to resolve the issue. Coinbase said in August that it had finally set up a phone number for customers to call if their account had been taken over, but that doesn't seem to be fixing the problem. Customers told us the live support was useless, a joke, and it was only for accounts that are actively locked. So we wanted to see what would happen when the Richardsons called Coinbase's new customer support line.
I'm going to call and see if I can get my account finally unlocked. And maybe should I ask if they will give me my money back?
A Coinbase agent does answer.
Well, I got locked out of my account about 2 months ago, and I haven't been able to get back in. Somebody stole 21 Bitcoin out of it.
The agent tells Richardson he actually doesn't have access to his case file, instead saying he should respond to a Coinbase email he'd already responded to. A Coinbase spokesperson says, "We recognize the challenges some of our customers have experienced with their Coinbase accounts. Improving our customer experience continues to remain a top priority." Eric says his big regret is not doing more to safeguard his Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Chainlink before the theft, which he thinks happened because that text alert was likely a phishing attack to steal his information. One option he considered but didn't follow up on was a hardware device used for cold storage of cryptocurrencies.
I'm beating myself up every day because I have my friends' voices in my head. Eric put it on cold storage, and I just didn't.
Nicole DeSico, who helps clients secure their cryptocurrency, says cold storage is virtually hack-proof. You get a private key, which is like a password, to buy and sell crypto, and you store that key offline.
When you keep your funds in cold storage, you own those funds, you have access to them, they're offline, away from hackers.
Of course, the problem with even that solution is owners can lose their passwords, or something can go wrong with the device itself. As far as the Richardsons, soon after our interview, Coinbase restored access to their account. They also received a credit from Coinbase, but nowhere near what they lost. Just $500 worth of Bitcoin.
It felt like they kicked sand in my face. That's what made me think, is there even anybody senior at Coinbase looking at this?
You can hear the frustration and you feel for those investors right there. Eamon Javers joins us now. Eamon, does Coinbase offer any type of protection in cases like this? You know, when you have your money in a bank, there's a portion that is covered by the FDIC up to $250,000 per bank.
You know, there's nothing like the FDIC in the crypto world. There just isn't the history here of the government regulation for all of that infrastructure to exist. Crypto is a very, very new thing. So if you lose your crypto to a hacker, you are really at risk. There's no guarantee you're going to get that money back. Coinbase has paid some of the people who've lost money some money, but as you saw in our piece there, it's not nearly the value of what they lost. And in many cases, Coinbase says, look, the hack happened on your phone, therefore it has nothing to do with us. We're not responsible for your loss.
For people that are invested in crypto or want to get into crypto, you mentioned cold storage in your story. Can you walk our viewers through what exactly that is?
Sure. Cold storage is a technique of storing the access to your cryptocurrency offline and away, therefore, from hackers, right? You keep it either in a hard device, like a USB drive looking device, where you keep that access away from any computer that's hooked up to the internet, and therefore hackers can't get into it and steal it. But there are problems with cold storage as well. It's not 100% foolproof, but a lot of people swear by it because it's one more way to make sure that your funds are safe online. Ironically, what some people are doing is they're taking that cold storage device and putting it in a safe deposit box in a good old-fashioned bank.
CNBC's Eamon Javers for us tonight. Eamon, thank you for that. Now to top stories global watch and the powerful earthquake rattling the Greek island of Crete. Video showing the 6.3 magnitude quake shaking buildings across the island. Several aftershocks have followed. So far, there have been no injuries reported, but this comes just 2 weeks after another earthquake there killed at least one person and damaged several ancient buildings. All right, in Latin America, the number of miners who crossed the Darien Gap has reached a record high. UNICEF says just this year, more than 19,000 children crossed the treacherous stretch of land that separates Colombia and Panama. That number tripling over the last 5 years. The agency calling it a humanitarian crisis, saying at least 5 children have been found dead in 2021, with another 150 arriving in Panama without their parents. And Prince Charles says his Aston Martin runs on wine and cheese. Future king revealing his car has been converted to run on biofuel known as E85, which uses environmentally friendly cheese waste and surplus white wine. The car was a gift from the Queen for his 21st birthday more than 50 years ago. All right, now to the Americas, focusing on stories from the U.S. and across Latin America. Tonight, we're in El Paso, Texas, where plans to build a massive arena are threatening a historic and predominantly Hispanic neighborhood. But now one woman in her 90s is working to save it from the bulldozers. Guad Venegas has more from El Paso.
They call her Toñita, and at 93, Antonia Morales is almost as old as the neighborhood she's fighting to save.
I like my community. I'm happy.
2 blocks of century-old structures, including a Chinese laundry and Victorian homes, all part of the downtown El Paso barrio called El Duranguito, where people displaced by the Mexican Revolution once settled. But for now, the future of part of El Duranguito hangs in the balance. The city of El Paso has been trying to build a 15,000-seat entertainment center here for concerts and sports events, which would mean destroying parts of the neighborhood Toñita's lived in for decades, so she's fighting back.
Que sigue pagando la renta. Sí.
Refusing buyouts to leave her apartment, she's now the only holdout in her complex, doing what she can to save this storied neighborhood.
La razón por lo que no me fui es porque yo trabajé mucho para conservar esta comunidad para que vinieran a quererme sacar.
El Duranguito is one of 8 Latino heritage sites that have not been classified as historic districts, excluding them from conservation and protection, like this Dominican bodega in Rhode Island and this East Los Angeles Park, a historic gathering place for Chicano students.
Only 2% of all national landmarks have anything to do with Hispanic history.
Local historian David Romo says El Duranguito's historical significance is being overlooked.
We have roots here, and that's what we're fighting.
The former mayor of El Paso says economic growth in this area would benefit the community more than preserving it.
Did you guys consider building the arena at a different site? I mean, there's a lot of land in El Paso.
We looked at other areas. There were 4 studies done before I became mayor that determined that that was the best location.
The city won 3 lawsuits trying to stop the project, and another is still pending. But Toñita has no plans to back down, sure to become a historical figure herself, just like the neighborhood she hopes to save.
Mañana doy gracias a Dios.
Guad Venegas, NBC News, El Paso, Texas.
And coming up, the new water crisis in Michigan, another city now seeing dangerous levels of lead, with residents saying the state did nothing to warn them for years. How officials are now trying to prevent another disaster. Back now with the growing water crisis in Michigan. Lead levels in the town of Benton Harbor well above federal standards. Residents forced to wait in line for hours to get bottled water. And all of this happening not far from the city of Flint, where unsafe drinking water left many at risk for years. NBC News correspondent Megan Fitzgerald on the ground tonight in Michigan.
Just 3 hours from Flint, another Michigan city facing an urgent water crisis.
Smell like fish or something.
The contamination coming from old lead pipes.
Had you been drinking and cooking with the water before then? I had no idea.
The state says it's known about the elevated lead levels for 3 years and that residents had access to the information. But many residents say neither the city nor the state did enough to warn them of the dangers.
When did you learn that there was lead in the water?
Last week. I've been drinking the water, cooking with the water, brushing my teeth.
2 weeks ago, the state started distributing bottled water to residents after a petition was filed last month detailing the problem to the EPA.
The state of Michigan would not have responded to this crisis if it hadn't been for the petition from EPA.
How do you know that?
Because years had gone by where nothing had happened.
Hundreds of people have been waiting hours, lines stretched across several blocks. For some, this is their only hope at fresh drinking water.
This community cannot afford to buy water. I'm horrified. I cannot believe for 1 second that a city, a state, or the federal government will allow children to continue to drink this water.
But the state agency responsible for oversight of the water supply says they've been addressing the lead levels all along.
Steps were taken as soon as the elevated levels were recorded to work on that corrosion control and get that in place. Corrosion control takes time. We are seeing elevated numbers, but we're also seeing in general an improvement overall.
A community fearful and worried about their health.
Megan Fitzgerald joins us now from Benton Harbor, Michigan. Megan, so the spotlight is now on this issue. There are millions of dollars allocated, but the sad reality is that it's going to be a while before this problem is fixed.
Yeah, that's the thing here, Tom. The EPA, along with the state, allocated millions of dollars, as you mentioned, to try and fix the lead pipes here. But this is a process that could take years, and this is an issue that's happening right now.
You got a chance to speak with some of the residents who have to drink and sort of bathe with this dirty water. Could you sense the desperation in their voice when you spoke to them?
Tom, without a doubt, there's panic, there's frustration, there's anger because they've been drinking this water for years, for 3 years. Many of them say that they just found out that there was elevated levels of lead and that they shouldn't be drinking the water just yesterday. Some told us that they found out just a couple of days ago. So the idea that they were consuming possibly lead for the last several years is certainly concerning and an issue that could impact their health, Tom.
Megan Fitzgerald for us tonight. Megan, we thank you for that. When we come back, we take you on a trip to the northern U.S., helping you enjoy an awe-inspiring natural phenomenon without leaving your couch. This is a very cool segment. Stay with us. You're watching Top Story. Something a little different, a stunning view of the Northern Lights, the colorful light show in full display last night, a shimmering view seen from as far as Washington State. And tonight we want to leave you with just a glimpse, this one from central Minnesota. Enjoy. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks so much for watching Top Story. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.